Alright, this is another PlayStation board repair from PlayStation Repair Augusta. I am actually just making a video documenting and trying to see if we can get a little better of this area. Always adjusting for a new angle kind of sucks, or a new height. Alright. So this is what I received from a client. Their machine just has thermal paste everywhere. The only way to describe it is the manufacturer had thermal paste diarrhea because they have pooped all over this. And this is, other than a few smears just from transport, as you can see, it was, maybe you can't see. Yeah, it was transported in this, and that kind of picked up a little bit of it. But other than that, this is the condition that it came out of the machine in, all the way over to there. Wasn't that nice? Now, I've made comments before about the thermal paste used by manufacturers. Many people say it's just a horrible quality. I don't know if that's exactly the way to describe it. I think a better way to do justice to the fact that these are billion-dollar companies, and yes, they do things cheaply, but I don't think that they're, buying just crap thermal paste. I think they're buying a thermal paste that is engineered for a production scale environment. And what that means is they want to be able to do this. They want to just shit all over the board with it and it not short circuit anything. Because this PS4, from what I'm told, did run for quite a while, probably around close to a year, maybe not a full year, might have even been longer. This was acquired from one of our retail service providers that took it in on trade from a customer. So the exact details aren't known, but I would say that at least it definitely went beyond a year because, and you probably see me write in the notes, that this was an SAA model 001. If you're wondering where I get that from, this is how the boards are numbered throughout their different generations, or iterations, I should say. So this SAA-001, which means this was a first iteration board, which means it's part of the original release. Now, just to go and show, one, I don't think this should ever left the production line like this. Two, this thermal paste has started to dry out, but is not completely dry. So if I can get a nice, I still have to clean up my dust, so I've got shit in the way from having us a balanced approach here. Oh, and I also have a board underneath that I'm working on because this was kind of just the last minute grab. Let's set that over there. No wonder we were on an angle. I think now we should get a much more flat approach. As this, again, I decide these videos on the spur of the moment. So I had another board underneath it. I set it down, took a look at it, and I go, yeah, I want to document this with a video. Okay, so now we just got to get back to where we have a clear image. And I think that's a pretty good one. So for something like this, the very first thing you'd want to do if you're cleaning this off of your own machine is just grab you a dry Q-tip. And we're going to start with the piles. And notice that I'm not continuously going around. I want to scoop, but I don't want to smear more into the crevices. So I'm going to use these Q-tips like I got a ton of them, because I do. We're just going to start to work some of it off. And then notice I flipped already to a clean side. And we're going to throw it away and go with another one. throw it away and get another one. And I'm going to grab a couple here. So basically we're just cleaning out these wells. And this is not typical. I would probably say that if you get one that is like this, it's probably time to take it in to somebody that has tools, because you're going to see in a minute that I'm going to have to pull up down the microscope and use that to clean inside of it. Could you do it without it? Yes, you could. But I probably wouldn't recommend it. Lots of people use toothbrushes. Toothbrushes aren't good enough. Now, if you go on eBay and you buy yourself an ESD brush, and you probably want to get several different bristle types, I think you can get a whole pack for around like $8 to $12. You'll get a different assortment. ESD brushes are just anti-static brushes, because if you're going to be putting a lot of friction over those joints, doing it with a toothbrush could build up a static charge. Is it likely to kill your chip? No, more than likely not. Does it pose a risk? Absolutely. And so anybody that recommends a toothbrush, it makes me chuckle inside, because you shouldn't be recommending it. There's tools that are made for that, and they're not expensive. And so when I said $8 to $12, yeah, you probably don't want to buy the pack. If you could buy it individually, it might be worth it. But I think individually, they charge you a couple of dollars for one, whereas in the pack you get like 8 to 12, and you're going to spend $10 on average for those. And you could go real slow with just the Q-tip and the cotton, but it'll take you forever, and you probably won't get it clean. For the most part now, we are clean. And my next step here would be to either use an ESD brush, but what I like to do to make it faster and so that I don't permanently gunk up the ESD brush, because that stuff is hard to get out from it. You'd have to soak it in isopropyl itself and start to clean it, blah, blah, blah. When you have a microscope, it's easy enough to just do this. All right. So we're going to take some fine tip tweezers. And I did just buy some new tweezers off of Amazon. I figured I'd try them out just to see if they were worth. And there's some things I don't like about them. There's some things I do. Not sure if it's something I would recommend yet, but these are my original tweezers, Bestex. I don't even remember where I got these from. These, like I said, I just got on Amazon. They were one of their top recommended. And it just had one of the things I liked about their little assortment kit. And I figured I'd try it out just for this, is it had these. And you can see that's still much thicker than the tips that I'm using. I've bent these, curled them. I kind of shape them as I see fit. But these already had that curl. But what I want to see is how do they scrape. So I want to get closer. I locked my, there we go. Adjusting your camera. Okay, so this will probably look, I'm not well adjusted on mine. Okay, now we've got to adjust yours again. Makes you contemplate wanting to get an autofocus camera. Okay, so you can start to see now, but in the camera it really doesn't look like as much as it is. But as I'm scraping, take a look. You'll see just all this debris is coming out. we're going to grab those Chemtech wipes that I talked about in a previous video. Basically, I'm just scraping out the big parts. I'm making sure that I'm getting it from around those edges where it likes to stick. And you don't want to dig into this, because if you start scratching this area, you could cut into some circuitry. So you have to be careful. Just kind of gliding over it and kind of tracing the pattern of how it was built. You know what? There, much brighter light. One of these days, hint hint Amscope, somebody is going to invent a base station that'll accept any number of cameras and be able to adapt for autofocus or different lighting setups. And I don't know if I should say hint hint Amscope. Amscope, I don't know if they've ever engineered a microscope in their life. They really just rebrand and package what's already created, and it's created by a couple of different companies. I'm sure there's more, but it seems like there's 3 or 4 that I've found that are creating the majority of these cameras for everybody in the world. At least what's being sold, marketed, and advertised on the mainstream. There's probably some boutique microscope manufacturers that maybe already do what I just said, but anytime you deal with customized items, they charge ridiculous pricing. Kind of like the medical industry as well as the soldering industry. The fact that they can build something for a couple of $100, and they turn around and want to sell it for thousands. I respect the hustle, but it gets a bit absurd after a while. All right. And that's our nastiest area there. Now that we've grabbed out some of those globs, we're going to go back to the Q-tip. We're going to wet the Q-tip, not the chip. So we're going to saturate the Q-tip head, not the chip. And then we're just going to give it a rub down. And the problem, if I hadn't scraped it out first, is that whatever it uses, thermal paste is a mixture of different things, and I guess the base ingredient, or what would be considered a filler ingredient, the non-thermally conductive parts, are typically some type of silicone or non-silicone lubricant that is non-drying. And I guess part of that property is that it has a little bit of resistance to solubility. Like water, forget about it. Isopropyl does a decent job of breaking it down. If you get really stubborn chips, you want to use It's basically just, like orange glow spray. Do not use orange glow from the store. That will be a problem for you because there are other chemicals. In this, it's deionized water, which is demineralized water. It's extremely pure. As long as you didn't go and open up the cap and start pumping dirt into it, or in some way allow it to contaminate itself, it should be a fairly pure water source, kind of like eye drops. Eye drops need to be pure and mineral free, otherwise they're going to scratch your eye, not soothe it. But to show what this stuff is called, this is made by Arctic. I recently started making some of my own once I found out it was just deionized water and like an orange, a bitter orange essential oil, or an essence of, but basically it's an oil extract of an orange, which is the same thing they use to make the orange cleaner. And at the price, this stuff is heavy. Thermal paste, the cleaners, they're heavy with profit margin. Like I would have to imagine they're probably marking it up 1,000, 2,000, 3,000% from production cost, if not even more than that when you scale this stuff for manufacturing, because they produce quite a bit of it. Thought about making my own thermal paste, and I may do it one day for fun, but it seems to be two problems to that. One, a bit of a pain in the ass to get all the materials together, and then two, the manufacturers that have these materials and the quality that you want to give them are not interested in selling to the little guy. They want you to come in and buy it by the ton. Now, after using this stuff, you will want to use, they have a two-part solution. The next part is just straight deionized water. I mean, you could just follow up with your isopropyl, but you definitely want to clean it away. This is not something you would leave on the chip because it does have that orange oil extract in it, so there's going to be a residue. And I don't often use it just because I don't like the residue, and I just realized that I did not scrape all this out. In fact, I left a big old gob of it in this. See, it's hard even for me to see until I get enough of a contrast between the other ones to know that, hey, something looks different there. Throw that away. I'm going to use some isopropyl to break this down. And this doesn't have to be perfect, because like I said, I'm pretty sure that the material that they're using is going to be a high grade of non-conductivity, which means it should not short these pins out. However, the debris that's getting blown through the system is not non-conductive, and as more of that debris stacks up on there, eventually it could cause enough conductance to blow something. If it hasn't already. This chip could be dead and all this cleaning is for naught. But I wanted to show one, what a horribly applied thermal paste job will do. If you put too much, which was the case there, it just keeps flowing. They typically put a dot, and it depends certain die chip structures versus the material you're using as to whether or not you're going to apply a layer and then thin it over. And also in some automated processes, they use an automated dispenser that does a micro size line that just kind of builds it out like it's drawing, or kind of like a 3D printer where it just kind of gobs a stream back and forth until it's completely flowed over that entire chip surface, and then the heat sink is pressed down onto it, whether it's a gob in the center or a flat stream line. It's pressed down on top of it, and then it disperses, and it does take a few heat flow cycles. The console kind of does its thing, it warms up, and as it warms up, it gets a little more kind of ooey gooey, and that helps it to kind of smooth and fill in the gaps as it's more pliable. Once it cools, then it kind of locks itself back into place. And there's a time frame that is recommended on the back of your console, kind of like, burning in an engine on a car. You want to kind of run it casually before you start mashing the gas down the highway. Same thing applies to new thermal paste being applied. It hasn't had a chance to kind of seize into all the cracks and crevices so that it can do its best job possible. In this case, this thing got into every crack and crevice, even the ones that it shouldn't have. So that part wasn't the problem. Now, a manufacturer's thermal paste does tend to dry out faster. I usually have seen that it needs to be replaced after the first year, and that's probably stressing it. I tell most people, finish out your warranty with the manufacturer. There's no need to bring it in for service before then. But after that warranty is over, or if you start to notice that you're having problems, and this is that thermal surface purifier. This is basically just deionized water. And they call this number 2. Not sure if, there you go, you can see it. All right, so at this point, clean enough. We could probably go back over that part. This cloth does a much better job at kind of polishing off that final clean than the Q-tip does. I guess that's why they're Kim wipes, and the other is just Q-tips that you can buy at Walmart. All right, so that is it. That cleans it up. Let's take a look at all sides here. And that's as good as it needs to be. So if you ever wondered what cleaning out thermal paste entailed, this was probably a little bit more in depth than your average thermal paste cleaning, and that was because it was an over splatter from the manufacturer where just too much product was put down and then it flowed out into everything else. Whether or not that is what caused the problem with this machine, I don't think that it was. I think it probably just was overheating, or it may be something else going on with the machine. My next step now is going to be just to do a basic reflow, reball it. I'm going to run it through a heat cycle and see then if I can actually get the machine to turn on. If the machine does want to turn on after going through that reflow, then the next step would more than likely be to go ahead and reball it. At that point, then you know that that repair is permanent, and we were able to verify that a reflow was what was needed based on, or a reball was what was needed based off of a reflow being successful. If it's unsuccessful, a reball possibly could have still fix the issue. However, it's not worth pursuing if we get to that point. So you try what is your least amount of work to get the highest return in repair possible. And then from that, you move on. And so in this case, again, being a first-generation board, going through the reball phase on it, unless you know that it's going to work, is just too time-consuming and too much energy to really say that it was justified. Now, if this was a newer PS4 or a PS4 Pro, I probably would be starting with that step and not going with the just the reflow trial. So again, kind of give you a little bit of insight into the thought process of how I'm going to go about repairing this to see if it is repairable. And other than that, that's it. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them below in the comment section. I will answer them as quickly as possible. Also, if you like this video and would like to see more, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe. That's what lets us know those types of videos are working and to create more that are like that. So again, if you have an interest in seeing more, hit like, hit subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next video.